"Danny, come back here, don't run off," Jordan Myers shouted, weaving through the sea of people packed outside the concert gates. His 5-year-old son darted ahead, a flash of messy curls and a tattered backpack bouncing with each step. Jordan finally caught up and scooped him into his arms, breathless. "I swear, kid, you're gonna give me gray hair by 30. Danny laughed, wrapping his arms around his dad's neck. "But we're gonna miss the music," Jordan looked over the crowd. They were still an hour away from the gates opening, and the lines were already insane. He sighed. This wasn't how he'd planned to spend his Saturday night wedged between strangers, stomach growling, trying to keep his kid entertained. But Danny had begged for 2 months straight to see Lunar Ray, the pop star of the moment, and after picking up a last-minute resale ticket off a coworker, Jordan caved. He glanced down at the people around him. Teenagers, couples, girls in glitter makeup. No other solo dads holding their hyper 5-year-old with a lunchbox full of peanut butter crackers. "Excuse me," came a soft voice behind him. Jordan turned around just in time to see a woman stumble, nearly shoved out of the line by a group of rowdy teens trying to squeeze past. "Hey," he barked, stepping forward, instinct kicking in. He caught the woman by the arm before she lost her footing completely. "Watch it, guys. She was here before you." The teens muttered apologies and moved on, but Jordan didn't let go of her arm until he was sure she was steady. Then he looked at her and blinked. She was stunning. Not in the overdone way some of the girls around them were, but in a clean, effortless way. Her dark brown hair was pulled into a low ponytail, a plain hoodie zipped halfway up over a white tank top, and sunglasses sat perched on her nose despite the fading sunset. She looked normal and completely out of place. "Thanks," she said, her voice low and smooth. "I've been saving that spot for 15 minutes. You good?" Jordan asked, stepping aside so she could slide back into her place in line. She nodded, glancing down at Danny in his arms. "Is he your little concert buddy?" "Unfortunately for my eardrums, yeah," Jordan said, making her laugh. "I'm Jordan, this is Danny." "I'm Sienna," she replied, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, but her smile was warm. "Nice to meet you both." They stood awkwardly for a second, then Danny tugged on Sienna's sleeve. "Do you like Lunar Ray too?" Sienna crouched to his level. "She's my favorite. Especially her song Midnight Fire." Danny's eyes lit up. "That's my favorite too." Jordan watched the two of them talk, surprised at how natural it felt. He hadn't talked to a woman like this in a long time, especially not someone who didn't immediately flinch at the words "single dad." When the gates finally opened and the crowd surged forward, Jordan instinctively reached for Sienna's arm again, helping her stay close. Somehow, they ended up inside together, and when he offered for her to join them near the front left railing, she nodded without hesitation. "I don't want to elbow my way through this chaos alone," she said. As the lights dimmed and the show began, Jordan hoisted Danny onto his shoulders, the kids squealing with joy. Sienna stood beside them, singing along quietly, her hand brushing Jordan's arm once or twice. Between the music, the lights, and Danny's laughter, Jordan couldn't remember the last time he felt this light. Good. After the show, they walked together toward the parking lot, the crowd thinning around them. "So," Jordan said, "thanks for making our night more interesting." "Are you kidding?" Sienna smiled, glancing down at Danny, who was half asleep on Jordan's shoulder. "You saved my spot, I owe you. That's what dads do, save spots and chase kids." "And eat way too many peanut butter crackers." She laughed again, and it hit him right in the chest. "Hey, let me give you my number," she said suddenly, pulling a pen from her pocket and scribbling on the back of Danny's concert map. "In case Danny ever wants to go to another show." "Or you do?" Jordan blinked, surprised. "You sure?" Sienna's eyes met his. "I'm sure." She turned and walked off toward a black car waiting at the curb, sleek, tinted, and clearly not a rideshare. A man in a suit opened the back door for her, but before she got in, she looked over her shoulder and smiled. Jordan stood frozen, Danny now snoring softly against his chest. He had no idea who she really was, and she had every intention of seeing him again. 3 days later, Jordan stood in the break room of the auto shop, frowning at the vending machine like it had personally offended him. "Come on," he muttered, slamming the side of it. "You ate my dollar and gave me nothing." That's theft. Try sweet talking it, Matt called from the other side of the room, grease streaked across his coveralls. That's how I got a Snickers last week. Jordan rolled his eyes, pulling out the crumpled concert map from his work jacket. He'd folded it and unfolded it so many times the edges were starting to tear. Her number was still scrawled across the back in blue ink, slightly smudged from his thumb. He hadn't called, not because he didn't want to, because he didn't know how to. What was he supposed to say? Hey, I'm the guy with peanut butter crackers and a 5-year-old who screamed the lyrics to every song at slightly off-key volume. Want to grab coffee? It sounded ridiculous even in his head. After work, he picked Danny up from Miss Curtis's house, the older woman who lived 2 doors down and watched him in the afternoons when Jordan worked late. She handed over a coloring page and a half-full juice pouch, along with her usual commentary. He tried to convince me that chocolate milk counts as dinner, she said, raising an eyebrow. Jordan ruffled Danny's hair. Nice try, bud. That evening, while Danny lay curled up on the couch watching cartoons, Jordan stood at the kitchen counter, the map in one hand, his phone in the other. He stared at the number again, heart pounding. He finally dialed. It rang twice. Hello, her voice was exactly as he remembered it, calm, husky, and a little amused. Hey, he said, clearing his throat. It's Jordan from the concert. There was a pause. Then, I was wondering when you'd call. You were, of course. You had the best concert companion in the entire arena. I figured that wasn't a one-time thing. Jordan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He was asking about you yesterday. Said you knew the words better than I did. Well, he's not wrong, she said. What are you doing Friday? Working until 5. Why? I want to show you something. And I promise it doesn't involve screaming pop songs or vending machines that steal your money. He laughed despite himself. All right, but Danny's with me that night. Perfect, she said without hesitation. I'll send a car. The line clicked off. Friday arrived faster than he expected. At 5:30, a sleek black SUV pulled up in front of their apartment building. Jordan double-checked Danny's shoes, wiped a smudge off his own jeans, and adjusted the collar of his cleanest button down. He had no idea why he was nervous. It wasn't a date, except it felt exactly like one. The driver opened the back door with a polite nod. Inside, the cabin smelled faintly of sandalwood and leather. Danny immediately pressed his face to the window, watching the city whiz past. Where are we going? Jordan asked, glancing at the driver through the rearview mirror. You'll see, the man replied without looking back. They pulled up 20 minutes later in front of a modern glass building downtown, the kind with a private entrance and no visible signage. Sienna was waiting just inside the lobby, wearing tailored black pants and an emerald silk blouse that shimmered under the lights. Her hair was down this time, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. Hi, she said, reaching for Danny's hand as they approached. Glad you made it. Jordan hesitated. Where exactly are we? Sienna smiled. Come see. She led them through a set of polished doors into a wide, open space filled with paintings, sculptures, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. A small sign near the entrance read Ray Foundation, Youth Arts Initiative. Jordan looked around, stunned. This is yours, my family's, she said, watching Danny wander toward a set of easels in the corner. But I run this branch. We work with kids from underserved communities, give them a place to create, perform, express themselves. He turned to her, something shifting in his chest. That's incredible, she shrugged, as if downplaying the significance. I wanted you to see it, and I thought Danny might like to try the music room. As if on cue, a staff member appeared and offered Danny a tour of the space. Jordan watched as his son followed the woman down the hall, wide-eyed. I wasn't expecting this, he said. I know. She met his gaze. I didn't want you to. Jordan leaned against the edge of a glass display case. So you're not just a concert fan. I'm a lot of things, she said, slowly stepping closer. But I liked being just Sienna with you. He studied her face, everything starting to click: the car, the man in the suit, her confidence like she never had to second-guess a decision. You're not just rich, he said quietly. No, she replied. I'm a billionaire, he blinked. That's a pretty big reveal. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I didn't want that to be the first thing you knew about me. Jordan crossed his arms. Why me? She didn't hesitate. Because you saw me. Not who I could be for you, not what I had, just me. And because your son is the coolest kid I've met in months." He looked away, unsure how to respond. "I'm not asking for anything," she added. "I just wanted you to know who I really am. The rest is up to you." Before he could speak, Danny came running back in, holding a pair of headphones and grinning. "They have drums." Jordan looked at his son, then back at the woman who just dropped a truth bigger than anything he'd ever expected to hear. He wasn't sure what this was. But he knew one thing. He wanted to find out. The following week, Jordan climbed a narrow staircase inside a converted brick warehouse, clutching Danny's backpack in one hand and a bag of takeout in the other. The building smelled like citrus cleaner and varnished wood. He paused at the third floor, checking the number on the door before knocking. He hadn't expected her to call again. But 3 days ago she had. And now, somehow, he was here. The door opened, revealing a soft-lit loft that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. There were no flashy displays of wealth, no crystal chandeliers or gold-trimmed furniture, just clean lines, soft blankets, and walls that held more art than shelves. The only thing extravagant was the view, a wraparound wall of glass that framed the city's skyline like a painting. Sienna stepped aside, barefoot, wearing jeans and a sleeveless navy top. Her hair was gathered in a low knot at the nape of her neck. "Come in," she said. "He's already in the back with the piano instructor." Jordan stepped inside, taking it all in. "You have a piano instructor here. She comes once a week," Sienna said, closing the door behind him. "Danny said he wanted to try something new. I figured we'd see how he liked it. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to." She took the takeout from his hand and carried it to the open kitchen. "You brought food. Thought you might not have eaten yet," he said, watching her unpack containers onto the counter. "There's enough for you too." She gave a slight nod, then gestured toward the couch. "Sit, I'll grab plates." Jordan moved to the couch, sinking into the cushions. Everything here felt intentional, like she didn't just throw money at things, she chose them. That surprised him more than it should have. "So," she said a few minutes later, handing him a plate and sitting beside him, "I've been thinking, that sounds ominous." "It's not." "Well, maybe a little." She tucked one leg under the other. "I've been asked to speak at the gala next Friday. It's for one of the education funds I manage. I usually send someone else, but this year they want me front and center." Jordan raised an eyebrow. "And you're telling me this because?" "Because I'd like you to come with me," he blinked. "You want me to go to a Billionaire gala?" "Yes, as your date, as my guest. Is there a difference?" She looked at him evenly. "You tell me." Jordan ran a hand over his jaw. "You know I own 3 shirts without stains, right? Total. And one of them might be missing a button. You'll wear a tux, I'll take care of it. I don't need you to buy me clothes. I wasn't offering." She leaned back, letting her eyes find his. "I was inviting you into my world." He stared at her for a long moment. "And what if I don't fit?" "I'm not asking you to change, I'm asking you to be there." He hesitated. "What about Danny? He's coming too." Jordan's eyebrows lifted. "To a black tie gala, there's a children's lounge with supervision, art stations, movie screenings." "He'll be fine." Jordan looked toward the hallway where faint piano notes drifted out. "You planned all this." "I prepared for the possibility." He laughed under his breath. "You always like to be in control. I like to be ready." Jordan took another bite of food, chewing slowly. "And what happens if I say no?" "Then I'll be disappointed, but I won't push." She paused. "I'd rather you come because you want to." He studied her the way she waited without pressure, still entirely composed. "All right," he said finally. "I'll go." "Good." She set her plate down. "There's just one thing. Here we go. You can't show up in work boots." He gave a short laugh. "It's part of the charm." Sienna stood and walked to a small cabinet near the window. When she returned, she handed him an envelope. "What's this?" "Details, address, times. And yes, tuxedo fittings." He opened it to find a handwritten note on thick stationery, instructions in precise cursive, and a black card tucked beneath. Not a credit card, an invitation. He turned it over in his hands. "This thing looks fancier than my rent." "Probably is." He looked up at her. "Are you always like this?" "Like what?" "Unpredictable, direct, ridiculously prepared." She smiled. "Only when it matters." The piano stopped, and a moment later Danny came bounding into the room, cheeks flushed. "Dad, I played the Spider song." "You did." Jordan stood and ruffled his hair. Was it your favorite? No, Danny said, dropping onto the rug. But she said I was really good. Sienna knelt beside him. You were, and next time you'll learn something even harder. Danny grinned, then leaned against her without hesitation. Jordan watched them, something unspoken tightening in his chest. He hadn't expected this, not the invitation. Not the feeling of belonging in a place so far from home, and definitely not the way Sienna looked at him like she wasn't waiting for him to prove himself but simply to show up. As himself, he didn't know what he was stepping into, but for the first time in a long time he didn't feel like he was behind, he felt seen. And maybe, just maybe, that was more powerful than anything money could buy. The gala was held in a historical mansion-turned-event space perched high above the river, its sweeping terraces glowing under the soft gold light of chandeliers and lanterns. Cars glided up the curved driveway beneath a canopy of climbing roses and ivy, one by one releasing guests in gowns and tuxedos who disappeared behind towering doors. From the back seat of the sleek SUV, Jordan adjusted his bow tie for the 10th time. It still felt like someone else's collar around his neck. A valet opened the door, and Jordan stepped out into a world that buzzed with hushed luxury and effortless confidence. Danny followed behind, holding his hand, dressed in a tiny tailored navy suit, his curls combed into something halfway decent. Sienna emerged last, her gown a deep indigo that shimmered subtly with each step. She didn't wear anything flashy, no tiara or blinding jewelry, but she didn't need to. The way she carried herself was enough to part the sea of people as they entered. Inside, the air was filled with the clink of champagne glasses, the low murmur of conversations in multiple languages, and music from a live quartet echoing gently off marble walls. Jordan scanned the room, distinctly aware of the weight of every stare. He felt like a misplaced puzzle piece until he looked at Sienna. She reached for his hand without hesitation, fingers threading through his. You all right? She asked softly. I've fixed cars in alleys darker than this room, he muttered. This is a whole different universe. You're doing fine, she said. Besides, the people here are just louder about hiding their mess. He glanced sideways at her. You always this good at reading people? No, she said. But I've had a lot of practice pretending to fit in rooms I didn't ask to be in. A woman in a silver dress approached, her expression sharp and assessing. Sienna, finally. I was beginning to think you were dodging the spotlight. Sienna's smile was polite but tight. You know I never miss a chance to disappoint you, Evelyn. Evelyn's eyes shifted to Jordan. And this is, Jordan extended his hand. Jordan Myers, she looked him over. Ah, the mechanic. And father, Sienna added, her tone clipped. Evelyn blinked and moved on with a nod, leaving behind a trace of tension. Jordan exhaled. That happened a lot, more than I'd like, she said, but less than it used to. 2 hours passed in a whirlwind. Sienna floated effortlessly between donors and board members, but she always kept Jordan within reach. Danny was escorted to the children's lounge by a staff member with a clipboard and a practiced smile, waving over his shoulder as he disappeared around the corner. Jordan found himself in the middle of a conversation with a man who'd built a tech empire before 30 and a woman who owned an entire chain of wellness resorts. They asked questions he didn't fully understand about investments and international markets, and he answered honestly. He didn't know much about those things, but he knew what it meant to work hard and raise a kid alone. That seemed to land better than he expected. A tap on the crystal glass signaled the shift into speeches, and Sienna was called to the center of the room. She moved through the crowd with quiet confidence, accepting the mic with a nod. The room hushed. When I was 16, she began, I found a sketchbook in the trash behind one of my father's buildings. It belonged to a kid named Marcus. He'd been evicted with his family. That sketchbook was the only thing he left behind. It was filled with comic book art, pages of unspoken stories. I never forgot it. She paused, glancing at the audience. Tonight isn't about numbers or prestige. It's about making sure kids like Marcus get seen, heard, believed in. Her voice was steady, but Jordan saw the flicker behind her eyes, the memory, the weight of it. She wasn't speaking from a script. She was speaking from the truth. When the applause finally died down, she stepped off stage and returned to Jordan. You okay? He asked. I meant every word, she said. But I hate public speaking. He gave her a look. You could have fooled everyone here. I was only trying to reach one person. Before he could ask what she meant, a staff member approached. Excuse me, Miss Ray. There's a situation in the children's lounge. Sienna stiffened. What kind? Your guest Danny was upset. He wanted his father. He's all right now, but he's been asking for you both. Jordan didn't wait. He was moving before the sentence finished. They found Danny in a quiet hallway, sitting on a bench with a staff member crouched beside him. His tie was askew, eyes red-rimmed but dry. Jordan dropped to his knees. Hey, buddy, what happened? Danny sniffed. The other kids said this isn't a place for people like me, that I didn't belong here. Jordan clenched his jaw, fury rising in his chest, but Sienna knelt beside him, her voice calm. And what did you say to that? Danny looked at her, lower lip trembling. I said I belong wherever I'm wanted. Sienna touched his cheek. And were you wanted here? He nodded slowly. You invited me, then that's all that matters. She stood and turned to the staff member. Thank you. We'll take it from here. They walked to the balcony, away from the polished crowd, the music, the clatter of wealth. The city stretched below them, lights flickering like stars. I don't want him in places that make him feel small, Jordan said quietly. You shouldn't have to, Sienna replied. And he never will again, not if I have anything to say about it. He looked at her, the woman who had slipped into his life like a spark in dry grass and changed everything without asking for permission. You mean that? He asked. All of it. Jordan let out a breath. This whole thing's been a whirlwind, I know. I don't have a penthouse or private jets, Sienna. She stepped closer. I don't want someone with those things. I want someone who shows up, who kneels beside a crying kid in a tux and makes him feel safe. Someone who doesn't flinch in a room full of people trying to measure his worth. He reached for her hand. You've got that. And you've got me, she said, pulling him into a soft, certain kiss. Behind them, Danny leaned against the balcony railing, yawning. Can we go home now? Jordan laughed, pressing his forehead to Sienna's. Yeah, kiddo, we're going home. 3 months later, they opened a new wing at the Ray Foundation, an arts and mechanics fusion program for kids who didn't want to choose between creativity and skill. Jordan led the hands-on classes. Danny took piano on Tuesdays. And Sienna. She finally stopped pretending to belong in other people's worlds because she'd found one of her own with them. The early morning sun filtered through the curtains of the lakeside cabin, casting a golden glow across the hardwood floors. Jordan stood barefoot in the kitchen, flipping pancakes while Danny sat at the table, humming to himself as he colored the corner of a crossword puzzle he had no intention of solving. The smell of butter and fresh coffee filled the air. Outside, the lake shimmered under the spring light, the water still and glassy. Birds chirped in the distance, and the only hum of activity came from Sienna, barefoot on the dock, her hair pulled into a loose braid as she tossed breadcrumbs to a cluster of ducks gathered near the edge. She was wearing an oversized sweatshirt that belonged to Jordan and a pair of leggings that looked far too thin for the morning chill, but she didn't seem to notice. Dad, Danny said without looking up. Do ducks have birthdays? Jordan flipped a pancake and glanced at his son. I guess so. Why? Because I think that one with the funny feathers should have a party. He's the boss duck, Jordan grinned. You planning on baking a cake only if I get to eat it? Sienna returned a few minutes later, hands tucked into the sleeves of her sweatshirt. That duck is the size of a small dog. I think he's been fed by every cabin on this lake. Danny says he's the boss duck, Jordan said, sliding pancakes onto plates. Then he needs a crown, she replied, pressing a kiss to Jordan's cheek as she passed. They ate breakfast together at the long, rustic table, the kind that looked like it had hosted 100 noisy meals and still had room for more. Afterward, they took the canoe out, with Danny nestled between them, pointing at every ripple and rock like he was discovering a new continent. It was peaceful, uncomplicated, in a way that made every chaotic gala and high-stakes meeting feel like they belonged to someone else's life. Later that afternoon, after Danny had passed out on the couch mid-cartoon and Sienna had slipped back out to the porch with a book, Jordan joined her, carrying 2 mugs of tea. You've been quiet, she said, setting the book aside. I've been thinking, he replied, handing her the mug. Dangerous. He sat beside her on the wicker bench, letting the silence stretch a little longer before speaking again. You know, when we met, I had no idea who you were, and even after I found out, I kept thinking it would be temporary. Like eventually, you'd remember I wasn't one of your people and move on. She didn't interrupt, just watched him, her expression unreadable. But you didn't, he continued. You kept showing up, not just for me, for Danny, for everything. I didn't show up, she said softly. I stayed, Jordan looked at her. Why? Because I fell in love with you, she said. Both of you. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into the pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small, dark wooden box. He didn't open it, just held it out to her. She stared at it, then slowly took it from his hand. When she opened it, the breath caught in her throat. Inside was a ring, simple but exquisite, a brushed platinum band with a single round diamond nested in a slender setting. No frills, no excess. Just beautiful in the way that truth was beautiful. I don't have yachts or art collections, Jordan said, and I can't throw million-dollar fundraisers or negotiate across 5 time zones, but I can wake up beside you. I can raise Danny with you. I can make you pancakes and walk the lake trail and be the guy who always shows up, and if that's enough for you, then I'm asking you to marry me. Sienna's eyes filled, but she didn't blink them away. You think I care about yachts? I think you've met a lot of people who only cared about what you could give them, she nodded, and you never asked for anything. He reached for her hand. Except this. She closed the box and set it on the bench beside them, then slipped onto his lap and cupped his face in her hands. You are enough, she whispered. You've always been enough. Their kiss was slow, deep, and certain. No fireworks, no orchestra, just the sound of the lake, the wind in the trees, and the steady thrum of something real. 2 months later, they married in the backyard of their newly purchased house just outside the city. It wasn't flashy. There were wildflowers instead of roses, handmade decorations Danny helped paint, and a borrowed string quartet from one of the youth programs Sienna supported. Jordan wore a navy suit. Sienna wore a sleeveless ivory dress that caught the sunlight and made her look like something out of a dream. Danny stood between them, holding a pillow with the rings and beaming like he was the one getting married. They exchanged vows under a wooden arch Jordan had built himself, with the lake behind them and every person who mattered in front of them. There were no reporters, no headlines, just laughter, the smell of lavender and fresh bread, and 2 people who had chosen each other when they didn't have to. That night, after the last guest had left and Danny had fallen asleep in a hammock with frosting on his cheek, Sienna stepped out onto the back porch, barefoot and glowing. Jordan pulled her into his arms. Wife. She smiled against his chest. Husband. They stayed outside until the stars turned sharp and bright above them, wrapped in a silence that didn't need filling. They had come from opposite worlds. But they had built a new one together, one where love wasn't measured by status or legacy, but by the quiet, loud, messy, beautiful ways they showed up for each other every single day. And they never stopped, not even once.